All right, let's dive into a conflict that you might not hear about much, but believe me, it was the battle that basically decided the fate of a whole subcontinent. This is the story of the Carnatic Wars, the duel for India.
So our whole story today, it's pulled right from these pages. And what a story it is. Full of ambition, incredible strategy, and a clash of empires that, well, you can still feel the echoes of today. Let's get into it.
So just picture this for a second. You've got two of Europe's biggest rivals, right? Britain and France. And they take their long-running feud and move it halfway across the world. Their new battlefield? India. And the prize? Oh, just an entire empire. The big question is simple. Who's gonna win?
So to really get a handle on this duel, we've got to set the scene and meet the contenders. Let's start with Section 1, Rivals for an Empire. Okay, so picture India in the 18th century. The Mughal Empire, which had been this massive dominant force for ages, is starting to crumble. This creates a huge power vacuum. You've got all these local rulers, these nawabs, all fighting for a piece of the pie. The whole place is basically a political free-for-all, which, you guessed it, makes it a super attractive target for any outsiders with deep pockets and big ideas.
And into this scene walk our two main contenders. On one side, you've got the British East India Company running their operations out of Madras. And on the other, the French East India Company, based down the coast in Pondicherry. Now, here's the thing. They both started out as just trading companies, but they had the exact same goal, a total monopoly on trade. And you know when two rivals want the exact same thing? A fight is pretty much inevitable. They were bound to go from the marketplace to the battlefield.
Now, you might think this whole thing kicked off because of some local squabble in India, right? Nope. The spark that actually lit this massive fire was struck thousands of miles away. And that brings us to the First War.
All right, so the First Carnatic War. It runs from 1746 to 1748. And believe it or not, it all gets started because of a fight over who should rule Austria, way over in Europe. The French got off to a hot start, even capturing the key British base of Madras. But the real game-changing moment, the one that made everyone's jaw drop, was a little fight called the Battle of St. Thome.
And that right there is the key. This wasn't just some isolated colonial spat. The rivalry between Britain and France was global. So when they start throwing punches in Europe over the Austrian throne, their companies in India see it as the perfect excuse to finally try and knock their main business rival out of the picture for good. And this is where things get absolutely wild. After the French grab Madras, the local ruler, the Nawab of the Carnatic, he's not happy about it, not at all. So he sends his army, a massive force of 10,000 soldiers, to go kick them out. And the French force they're up against? A tiny group of just 930 men. I mean, do the math. On paper, this should have been a complete wipeout. But it wasn't. The impossible happened. That small, disciplined, well-armed French force completely steamrolled the Nawab's giant army. This was a bombshell, a total shock to the system. It sent a message loud and clear all across India. A small, modern European army could take down a traditional Indian force that was 10 times its size. And that single lesson, it was going to change everything. So the First War kind of ends in a draw. Madras even gets handed back to the British. But both sides walked away with that incredible lesson fresh in their minds. And now they were about to use that knowledge in a way that was much, much smarter and a whole lot more cynical. The Second Carnatic War was a totally different beast. This time, the fight wasn't officially about Europe. It was about local politics, specifically who was going to be the next ruler in Hyderabad and the Carnatic. And this is where we meet the two masterminds of this whole affair, the brilliant French governor Duplessis and a young, ambitious British officer named Robert Clive. Honestly, this whole war was basically a personal duel between these two. So instead of going head-to-head directly, the British and French decided to play a different game, a proxy war. It's brilliant, in a ruthless kind of way. You just pick your favorite local candidate, back them with your money, your guns, and your soldiers, and let them do the fighting for you. It was like a giant chess match, with Indian princes as the pawns being moved around the board by European hands. And at first, the French were absolutely crushing it. Their guy, Duplessis, was a strategic genius. He was putting his allies on thrones left and right, and French influence was spreading like wildfire. But then, along comes Robert Clive.
His surprise attack and siege of Arcot, it was this incredibly bold, almost crazy move that completely flipped the script. It stopped the French in their tracks and announced to everyone that a new, formidable British leader had just entered the game.
The Second War, well, it also fizzled out without a clear winner. But by now, the rivalry was white hot. Both sides knew this couldn't go on forever. There could only be one top dog in India. The stage was set for one last, final showdown.
And just like the First War, this final round gets kicked off by a much bigger global conflict, the 7 Years' War. Some historians even call this the first real world war. France sends over a new commander, Count de la Lally, with orders to finish the British off for good. But he's going to have to face the battle-hardened British general, Sir Eyre Coote. You just knew everything was going to come down to one single decisive battle.
The year is 1760. We're talking decades of tension, of back alley deals, of proxy battles. It's all about to boil over. No more maneuvering, no more games. This was it. At the Battle of Wandiwash, and you can see it written here in Marathi script as well, the main armies of the British and the French finally met face to face. This wasn't about backing local allies anymore. This was the real deal, the final round of the duel for all the marbles. And the outcome? It was swift and it was brutal. A massive, decisive victory for the British. The French army wasn't just defeated, it was shattered. This one battle didn't just end the war, it completely destroyed the French dream of building an Indian empire and kicked the door wide open for the British to take over. So what happens after the smoke clears at Wandiwash? Well, the consequences were massive. They literally reshaped the future of the entire subcontinent. I mean, look at this. The new reality couldn't be clearer. Before all this, you could argue that European influence was kind of balanced. But after 1763, it wasn't even close. The British were now, without a doubt, the top European power in India. No contest. For the French, the defeat was absolute. Their military power? Gone. Their commercial clout? Crippled. Any political ambitions they had for India? Totally destroyed. They were allowed to hang on to a few tiny trading posts, like their old base at Pondicherry, but with a huge catch: no soldiers, no forts. They were basically declawed. They were no longer a threat. And this timeline really shows you how complete that collapse was. The Treaty of Paris in 1763 makes the defeat official. Just 6 years later, the once mighty French East India Company goes bankrupt and is dissolved. Their story in India kind of limps on in these tiny little pockets all the way until 1954, but for all intents and purposes, their imperial dream died on the battlefield at Wandiwash. And that leaves us with this one final, really important question. By winning the Carnatic Wars, the British East India Company didn't just beat the French. They got rid of the only other rival in the region who could match their military power and their resources. So with the French gone, who was left to stop a mere trading company from taking over an entire empire? As history was about to show, the answer was not much at all.